On November 23rd, I had some pregnancy complications and we went to the hospital, found out I had a partial placenta abruption. The next day, Wednesday morning, had some more complications. From that point on, they decided it was best for me to stay in the hospital just to make sure, they could monitor everything. On day 17 of bed rest, I started having contractions, went into labor, and 3 hours later, Hudson was born. He was born at 3 pounds and 1 ounce, and of course was taken straight to the NICU. Tyler was able to go with him from there.
And so they took me down to the NICU, and I got to put my eyes on Hudson for the first time, and without, nurses all around. And, it's if you haven't ever been in the NICU, it's a very traumatizing place to be. Everything's beeping. Hudson's in this little tiny incubator, and every little alarm goes off, and it makes you think what's going on, type of deal. But it was very surreal to be able to sit there, just me and Hudson, father with the son for the first time. And of course, Traci got to eventually join us after about an hour or so.
So after Hudson was born, Tyler and I were able to stay in the hospital for 3 more days, and then we did have to be discharged from the hospital while Hudson stayed in the NICU. And that was really hard, like having to leave, the hospital without your child. You don't expect to give birth to your baby and then leave them at the hospital. So that was definitely difficult going home without him.
Just sitting there throughout the days knowing your boy's in there struggling, he's fighting. And that was the biggest thing, was he fought so hard. And yes, it was very difficult, but at the same time, through all that darkness that we felt, we could also feel that God was still there holding our hands through it.
On Christmas Eve, they kind of noticed Hudson. We all kind of noticed Hudson wasn't acting the same, and some numbers came back elevated and that sort of thing. And we found out he had a fungal infection, which was causing him to be really, really sick. So kind of from that point on, the days got a lot harder. So I guess fast forward a little bit to January 4th. Hudson was super sick. They told us not to leave the hospital. It had gotten to that point. And so they gave us a room upstairs so we didn't have to leave. And Tyler came in and we just had that hard conversation of like, yep. Hey, we're at that point.
Yeah, I definitely felt something that day telling me, you need to have this difficult conversation that you don't ever imagine having. As much as neither one of us wanted to hear it, I said, we need to figure out how we're going to handle this, even if we have to walk out of here without Hudson. And that was definitely a very difficult conversation to have. But
yeah, and after that conversation, we were like, well, we'll head down and see everyone. And something told us, hey, let's stop by the NICU first and check on Hudson before we go see everyone. And so we went in there, and something was very different. And at that point, the nurse practitioner that day was like, you kind of have a decision to make. He was bleeding internally at that point, just super sick, probably wasn't going to make it through the night. They unhooked him and everything, except for a couple things. And they let Tyler hold him that day. And then from that point, they put us in a different room. They have a parent room. And they brought Hudson to us, and we were able to hold him and let our family come in and hold him. God blessed us tremendously with family and friends, not just the family that we created at the hospital with everyone, but just our family and friends back home. The day Hudson passed away, we literally had a room full of people waiting on us to grab us and hug us and be there for us in like the hardest moment of our life. And those people are still supporting us to this day. It's still crazy to me that, it's been 2 years now, and God's still using Hudson's story to reach other people. And I know the holidays can be really hard, and whether you lost someone around the holidays or earlier in the year, you still have that missing person, and the holidays are all about family. And it's a nice reminder to know that one day we're going to see them again if they're saved and they were a believer. We'll get to spend eternity in heaven with them. And so while we're hurting sometimes here on earth from missing them, it's that finding the joy on earth while longing for heaven. It's finding that balance of grieving and being happy while you're still with the family that you're around. It's both. It's okay to be sad in one moment and happy in the other. I think just as a mom, it does bring me peace to know that Hudson is sitting at the feet of Jesus and that he's spending eternity in heaven right now, and that one day we'll be reunited as a family. And don't get me wrong, we miss him every day, but just having that promise of eternity with Jesus just helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really struggling a while back after Hudson passed, and was in a very, very dark place mentally, and it came to a point where I had to come home to Traci and say, I'm not okay. I need your help. We need to sit down and pray and just ask God to help not only me but us through this, because I know you're struggling too. And that was with the help of Russ, we sat down and prayed multiple times, and before you know it, I was feeling good. And I'll talk about Hudson quite often now. It still hurts every now and then, but like Traci said, it helps to talk about him and just have those memories, no matter how short of a time it was or how long of a time it was. Those memories will help you in the dark times. And so.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is your perspective on the situation that you're going through. Looking back, obviously, do we want Hudson to be on earth with us? Yes, that's our selfish nature. But at the same time, we were able to spend 23 days with him, and some people don't even get that for various reasons, so we were able to spend 23 days with our son, and I will never take those days for granted. They were hard days, but they were days that we got to love on him and pray for him and just be with him. So fast forward a little bit, in July or August, I found out I was pregnant with our rainbow baby. And so God gave us the biggest blessing with Kennedy. She's 9 months old now, and she's just the happiest little baby ever. We refer to her as Hudson's little sister. Hudson will always be our child. And, I tell people we have 2 kids, and that sort of thing. And it also gives us an opportunity, when people ask, to talk about Hudson and to tell people our story and, the goodness of God, even in hard situations. So until we get to be with Hudson again in heaven, we'll be finding the balance between finding the joy here on earth and longing for heaven.